There's a week in August 1985 that almost nobody talks about anymore, not because it wasn't remarkable, but because the man at the center of it made it look effortless. For one single weekend, Michael J. Fox held the #1 and #2 spots at the US box office at the same time. Back to the Future was still sitting at the top after 8 straight weeks. Then Teen Wolf arrived and slotted in right beneath it. Same actor, same summer, same face on every poster. He was also starring in the second most watched sitcom in the country at that moment. He was 23 years old. Nobody does that. Almost no one in the history of Hollywood has done that. And if you'd told anyone on that August weekend what was quietly happening to Michael J. Fox behind the scenes, they wouldn't have believed you. Michael Andrew Fox was born in 1961 in Edmonton, Alberta, raised in a Canadian military family that relocated constantly. His father served in the Royal Canadian Armed Forces, so stability wasn't something the household had much of. They eventually settled in Burnaby, British Columbia, where a junior high drama teacher spotted something in the quiet kid with the natural comedic timing. He told him to audition for a CBC series. He got the part. He was 15. By the time he was 16, he'd already made a decision that would have terrified most parents. He dropped out of high school and moved to Los Angeles alone, with almost nothing in his pocket. His father, skeptical but not cruel, paid for the flight and sent him off with a line that's hard to forget: "If you're going to be a lumberjack, you might as well live in the forest." What followed were some genuinely brutal years. Fox survived in a tiny studio apartment in Beverly Hills, so broke he was eating jam packets just to get through the day. He was grinding through auditions, picking up bit parts, and learning the hard way that Hollywood doesn't owe anyone a career. When he finally tried to join the Screen Actors Guild, there was already a registered member named Michael Fox. He needed a new name. He briefly considered Michael A. Fox, took one look at how that sounded, and moved on fast. He chose the J as a quiet nod to one of his favorite character actors, Michael J. Pollard, and that was that. The Family Ties audition changed everything. He wasn't the producer's first choice for Alex P. Keaton. The casting director had to fight just to get him in the room. Once he was there, the role was never in question again. By 1984, Family Ties was the second highest rated show in America. Fox was receiving around 500 fan letters every week. Then the call came about a time travel movie. The story of how Fox ended up in Back to the Future is almost as wild as the film itself. He was originally passed over because the Family Ties producer didn't want to lose him mid-season. Another actor, Eric Stoltz, was cast and filmed nearly 80% of the movie before the director decided the tone just wasn't working. Fox was brought back in. To handle both projects at once, Fox rehearsed Family Ties from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening, then rushed over to the Back to the Future set where he'd film and rehearse until 2:30 in the morning. That punishing schedule ran for 2 full months straight. On Fridays, it was even more relentless. 2 live tapings of the sitcom, then straight to the film set until sunrise. He was reportedly so sleep-deprived that he once panicked backstage on Family Ties because he couldn't find a prop from the film set. His 2 worlds were bleeding together. The result of all that sacrifice: Back to the Future spent 8 consecutive weekends at #1 and eventually earned over $381 million worldwide. Then Teen Wolf, which Fox had filmed even earlier during a production break, opened in August and landed at #2, right behind it. One actor, the top 2 grossing films in the entire country at the same time. It was a level of star power the industry genuinely hadn't seen before. He was the biggest name in Hollywood, and the cracks were already forming beneath the surface. In early 1991, while shooting the film Doc Hollywood, Fox noticed a twitch in his little finger. He tried to shake it off. It didn't go away. He went to see a neurologist. The diagnosis? Early onset Parkinson's disease. He was 29 years old. His reaction to the doctor was one he later recalled clearly. "You know who you're talking to, right? I'm not supposed to get this." Parkinson's wasn't supposed to land on someone at the peak of their career, in the middle of their prime, with everything still ahead of them. But there it was, a progressive neurological condition with no cure, attacking the part of the brain responsible for movement and coordination. Doctors told him his ability to work could have a very short window left. He chose not to tell a single person outside his immediate circle. For 7 full years, Michael J. Fox kept his diagnosis completely hidden from the public. Maintaining the secret required constant management and an almost mechanical level of calculation. He timed his dopamine medication obsessively so the effects would peak at exactly the right moments on set. He always made sure to hold props or objects in his left hand during filming to mask any visible tremors. He positioned himself carefully in scenes. He described himself later as becoming a virtuoso of concealment. Every public appearance was a performance layered on top of his actual performance. His words about the medication were stark. There was only one reason he took the pills the way he did, and that reason was to hide. But medication alone wasn't what he was using to get through. Alongside the pills came the alcohol. Fox has never softened this part of his story. He turned to drinking to escape, to stop thinking about what an incurable progressive disease actually meant for the rest of his life. He described it as drinking to dissociate, to get out of his own head long enough to function. For a while, it worked well enough to keep moving forward. Then in 1992, it stopped working entirely. One morning, his wife Tracy and their young son Sam came downstairs and found him passed out on the couch. He was isolating himself from the people closest to him, and the one thing he'd been leaning on was tearing his family apart. Tracy later recalled how frightening that period was, because you don't know how something like that ends and you cannot live that way forever. Getting sober didn't bring immediate relief. Fox has been open about how the early years without alcohol were, in some ways, harder than the drinking itself. Without it, there was nowhere to hide from himself. His solution was to stay in constant motion. More work, more travel, more projects. Sitting still meant sitting alone with Parkinson's, and he wasn't ready for that. In 1998, Fox went public, disclosing his diagnosis in an interview with People magazine 7 years after he first received it. He later described that entire stretch as 7 years of denial. The reaction was enormous. Fans were stunned. Hollywood was shaken. The version of Michael J. Fox that people had in their heads, endlessly energetic, boyish, the guy who outran a time machine, didn't fit with what they were now hearing. He didn't disappear, he went in the opposite direction. In 2000, he founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. Built from scratch, run with the urgency of someone who'd spent nearly a decade watching the disease up close. He wasn't lending his name to an existing institution. He was building something designed to actually accelerate research, fund the studies that weren't getting prioritized, and operate with one specific, unapologetic goal: to make itself unnecessary. His line for it was simple: "We're in the business to go out of business." He didn't want more awareness, he wanted a cure. Parkinson's doesn't stop, that's the reality of it. The symptoms accumulate over time, and no amount of discipline, medication, or willpower changes the fundamental direction. It only affects the pace. Fox has been living with this for more than 3 decades, and the physical cost has been real. He has undergone spinal surgery to remove a benign tumor on his spine. He has broken bones in multiple falls caused by the balance and coordination deterioration that comes with the disease. In a 2023 television interview, he told anchor Jane Pauley directly, "I'm not gonna lie. It's getting harder. Every day it's tougher." He didn't say it with bitterness. He said it like a man describing the weather. Matter of fact, no performance attached. He officially stepped back from acting in 2020, acknowledging that memorizing lines had become too difficult to sustain reliably. But stepping back from acting didn't mean stepping back from anything else. In 2023, Apple TV Plus released Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, a documentary that refused to soften the reality of his daily life. It showed him falling. It showed him in pain. It showed the physical work that goes into something as simple as walking down a street. The film was nominated for 7 Emmy Awards and won 4. Critics described it as one of the most unflinching portraits of a public figure in years. In June 2024, he appeared on stage at the Glastonbury Festival in front of hundreds of thousands of people, playing guitar alongside Coldplay during their headline set. Lead singer Chris Martin told the crowd that Back to the Future was the reason Coldplay existed as a band. Before Fox had played a single note, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. In January 2025, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. He didn't treat it as a finish line. He used the platform to publicly call on the federal government to fully commit to the National Parkinson's Project and make ending the disease a national priority. In May 2025, he was cast in Season 3 of Apple TV Plus's Shrinking, a show that already features Parkinson's as a central storyline. He reportedly sought the role specifically because he wanted to bring his own lived experience to a character navigating the same diagnosis. In October of that same year, he released his 5th book, Future Boy: Back to the Future and My Journey Through the Space-Time Continuum, a memoir about the period when the most famous film of his career was being made, and what it's meant to him in the decades since. There's a version of this that ends quietly in 1991. Young star gets a devastating diagnosis, gradually fades from public view, becomes a footnote about the fragility of fame. That version didn't happen. What happened is that Michael J. Fox took the worst news of his life, spent 7 years fighting it alone in silence, fell apart in private, pulled himself back together, went public when he was ready, and then spent the next 25 years redirecting every ounce of the drive that made him the biggest actor of the 1980s into building something with a longer shelf life than any film. His foundation has raised over $2.5 billion for Parkinson's research, making it the largest nonprofit funder of the disease anywhere in the world. The research it has funded helped identify the first biological marker for Parkinson's, a genuine scientific breakthrough that changed how the medical community approaches the disease entirely. He is 63 years old. He has Parkinson's. He falls. He is in pain. And by every available measure, he is still moving forward faster than people who are perfectly healthy. The irony, and he'd probably appreciate the irony, is that the man who made the world fall in love with time travel has spent the last 3 decades in a very different kind of race against time, and he hasn't stopped running. The Foundation's mission as it stands today is to eliminate Parkinson's disease within our lifetime. Whether that happens or not, what Michael J. Fox has already done with the time he's been given is not something you file under tragedy, it's something else entirely.